From there, we get the range formation that we had been expecting this entire time after getting that liquidative move. We got the move down, we got the move up, we're ranging away from that low and high, and now on a higher time frame, you can also see, if you zoom out, you don't even see this down and upwards candle because it's not visible, because it's a liquidative move right there. So the candles on the higher time frame disappear because they're too narrow, and you have your low and then you have your high right there. We're focusing on the distribution model, so we're pulling that local structure right here from swing low to swing high, and we can see our distribution model taking place. And this is also where we confirmed our TCT distribution model with our 1, with our 2, and then price right here came back up for our extreme liquidity, and then we have our third tap right there in overall high probability TCT distribution model. Okay? In this situation, we yet again traded Bitcoin, but right here, as the distribution model is getting confirmed right here, we are in a pretty significant higher time frame ranging environment. So we broke structure right there on the lower time frame. So literally right here on the 28th of October during our New York session until the completion right here on the 4th of November, we are in a pro-contextual environment on our major, Bitcoin. Now, as Bitcoin is moving up into our range high category right there, and as Bitcoin is moving up into the third tab of our distribution, we now have a prolonged move towards the upside, approaching premium, being located at range highs, which is, from the foundation rule perspective, favorable for shorts. As we are moving up right there and we are deviating range high, any individual altcoin model that confirms a high probability TCT distribution model is going to be, contextually speaking, from our major perspective, in a semi-pro context environment. So as long as the altcoin is moving up prior to establishing our distribution model, we have an A setup. And then as the model right here gets confirmed, any altcoin model that you can find afterwards is from a pro A+ setup, because your major is in a pro. So as long as the individual altcoin is semi-pro, we are good to go. Okay? Now, in this situation, we had Bitcoin establishing the highest probability TCT model yet again, but as we are moving into resistance right there, we are semi-pro on Bitcoin, and we just need the proper TCT confirmation, which is always going to be the trigger to short your altcoin, contextually speaking, from a high quality perspective, especially after Bitcoin confirms its redistribution model right there, because now your major is in a pro environment. So we're switching from semi-pro to pro, just as right here we switch from semi-pro to pro, and everything turns into A+, and you can even trade lower time frame TCT models that are less high quality from an individual high probability variable perspective, because the context is so high probability. Okay? Now, from here, we get the rotation back down. We short Bitcoin right there. We short it all the way back down to the range low. We get this move towards the downside. We find local retracements right here. And in these local retracements, this is where you want to find shorts. In this case, Bitcoin is locally pulling back up right there, retesting supply POI. If you can find low time frame TCT models on your altcoins, you are simply trading the altcoin as Bitcoin is in a pro environment. So as long as the altcoin is slowly retracing up, finding that individual high probability TCT model, you can trade it. There's only so many examples that I can give you in this individual lecture, But on every single retracement that you see right here, the retracement right there, the retracement right there, if you can find any TCT model on an altcoin which is decent, they are most likely going to be playing out. Now, from there, we got the rotation back down until we established our new ranging environment. So right here, we are establishing a range as we are in a confirmed bearish order flow objective due to this redistribution model. So any model that we form in here could be TCT and TCT for the low time frame entry for the high time frame target. And if we can develop a high probability setup, we're trading from a major perspective in a pro environment, which again, if you're trading in these pro environments, your win rate is going to be so incredibly high. And as we develop this range right here, Bitcoin did not establish a proper TCT confirmation, but your altcoins did. See how we're always operating the two together? So let's pull up right here SUI USDT. Okay, SUI USDT on the 2nd of November right here. Perfect. So, as we are starting the range right here, you can see that this range starts on the 31st of October. When this range here starts on Bitcoin, we start this ranging formation right here on Solana or on SUI. As we look at SUI right here, we can see our high probability distribution model getting established, where we have our 1, we have our 2, on a lower time frame, we have our high quality third tap POI right here, which is that 10-minute OBIF. Price pulls back into that, creates the perfect mitigation and also the perfect low time frame structure, market structure break right here, allowing for literally 10 plus RR opportunities towards that range low. You can go and check this out for yourself as well. Again, I'm not going to go over the high probability variables of each individual setup, but you can see the range and efficiency, the return to zone, the quality break, the quality third tap POI, they're all there. Okay. Now, a thing and a characteristic that I want to highlight right here is that as this distribution model is developing, if we look at the context solely on SUI right here, we are trading semi-counter using the rules from the theory lecture prior. Why? Because prior to this range establishing, we have a prolonged move towards the downside right here that took a significant liquidity point on the left. And we're moving up into the first area of resistance right here. So this is the definition of trading semi-counter context on the individual altcoin. And this is where an exception takes place. Because if Bitcoin is still in a pro environment, as we are right here, and we're looking for that low time frame entry for that high time frame target, in those situations, these altcoin models can simply just dump lower. And this local liquidity grab doesn't matter because it's not ready to reverse back up because Bitcoin is still macro speaking bearish. So when Bitcoin is still in a pro contextual environment and we have that bearish order flow objective of getting the rotation towards the range low, it doesn't matter that your individual altcoin is technically speaking semi-counter. Because in these situations, I'm solely focused right here on this local push up into resistance as Bitcoin has a local move up. And I'm using it from a semi-pro contextual environment. Again, these are the exceptions that I cannot put in a theory lecture. It's something that you see in a live market environment. So right here, because Bitcoin is still in a bearish order flow objective due to the redistribution model 2 right here, and we're expecting a move down, I'm simply observing this local move up as a local move up arriving into potential supply and then changing it to semi-pro just because Bitcoin is pro. And then we yet again have pro on the major, which is Bitcoin. We have semi-pro on SUI, exception. So we're yet again in an A+ environment, contextually speaking. And again, guys, being in these A+ environments, as we develop our high probability TCT model, your win rate is going to be in the 80+%. Okay? Absolutely beautiful. Now, from there, analyzing back to Bitcoin, we can see that we break down from that range. We overall complete the bearish order flow objective of our distribution model right here. And we're seeing that move down. Okay? Now, on a higher time frame, we are expecting an overall reversal towards the downside all the way down towards 74K to complete that macro distributive model right here that started back in January 2025, okay? But you're obviously not going to get a consistent move towards the downside. You're gonna get pullbacks. Pullbacks are healthy, pullbacks are overall normal, okay? So right here, we take that low, we sweep some sell side liquidity, and we're locally pulling back up. And with that, we're going to be pulling up MNT yet again, right here. And as we are analyzing MNT, we're going to establish our context. So what we can see right here is an aggressive move down from that distribution model towards the downside, followed by that bounce back up after the liquidation took place, and we simply just died off afterwards, okay? Now, looking right here, we can see that wick getting created right there on that liquidated move down. Again, this wick itself has plenty of liquidity below it. Even just here locally, that wick front runs another significant point right there. So there's plenty of liquidity below that wick. And then from there, we can see this getting developed right here. Right here. So we see supply creation above. We have a significant liquidity point right here. And then we put in a low that has no accumulative price behavior, just a low that is front running a key liquidity point below us, aka a naked low, followed by price moving up, creating exhaustion at the highs, deviating the swing highs prior to establishing your ranging environment from a TCT distribution model perspective with your 1, with your 2, and with your 3. And as you're going up, you're creating sell side liquidity below these lows right here. Does this seem familiar from the overall theory lecture? We have a naked low with exhaustion at the highs and sell side liquidity creation at the lows, arriving and retracing into a potential supply POI that can cause a rejection back down. This is the perfect example of our bread and butter environment, where usually price locally retracing back up into resistance is going to be considered a semi-pro environment for a short opportunity. But right here, because it's changing into our bread and butter setup due to the naked low, exhaustion at the highs, and sell side liquidity creation at the lows, we are in a pro environment for a TCT distribution model to take place from the altcoin perspective in our context building environment. Okay, so we have our bread and butter setup right here on MNT. Again, your confirmation is always going to be the TCT confirmation in order to pull the trigger. And now let's analyze what in this pro-contextual environment Bitcoin is doing using this local pushback up, the starting point of our range, and our third tap confirmation to see where our major is at right here. So as MNT is pulling up right there, we have this, and then we have this right here. So what can we see? Okay, what can we see here on our major as our altcoin right here is in a pro environment for a TCT distribution model? What we can see is that we had that move down followed by a retracement back up. Whenever I see something like this, I always just move it back down to this point, okay? Which is basically going to be this starting point right here, which doesn't really matter a whole lot, okay? But we're just going to be focusing on that retracement leg. So what we can see is some supply POIs on the left here that have some liquidity above it. We're expecting an overall lower high for a lower low following our macro bearish order flow. We have some structure supply right here. We also have structure supply POIs higher up, which is very important to note. We have supply POIs higher up, but observing what price action is doing as the retracement is taking place, as the range starting point is taking place, and the third tap confirmation is present, we have Bitcoin moving up into potential resistance right here. So we have Bitcoin moving up into potential resistance. We don't have a bearish order flow confirmation. We don't. We have simply Bitcoin moving up into potential resistance. But that is enough to establish a semi-pro environment. We have gotten a bottom and we have gotten a move away from that bottom into potential resistance, while we are expecting some sort of a lower high for a lower low to take place, as we are getting our high probability distribution model confirmation on MNT. That means, contextually speaking, MNT is in a pro environment for the distribution to take place. Bitcoin is semi-pro. The confirmation is always going to be the TCT confirmation. And contextually speaking, we are in an A setup, an A environment, contextually speaking. So an A setup, contextually speaking, with our high probability distribution model is going to be an amazing trade. Pay close attention right here that Bitcoin makes a higher high right there before rejecting back down, and MNT only makes a lower high. Very similar to our Bitcoin and MNT situation at the all-time highs on MNT, where Bitcoin retraced back up, making a lower high, but almost exceeding that high again. And MNT already completed the distribution and only made a local pullback before the bearish continuation. Because as long as you get your TCT distribution model confirmation, the altcoin chart is simply going to be acting weaker as Bitcoin and reverse down and fulfill the entire distribution model completely once Bitcoin is ready to reverse. You don't need to get the bearish order flow confirmation on Bitcoin. You just need Bitcoin moving away from that bottom into potential resistance as you get your TCT distribution model confirmation. And afterwards from here, we're having another potential setup. So what we can see is right here, what we can see is on ENA, we have the aggressive sell-off right there, creating that liquidation wick as Bitcoin was selling off on October 10th. We pull back up right there into our created supply POI, our structured supply POI, that confirmed the overall aggressive sell-off right there, creating a TCT Model 1 distribution on the higher time frame, and then selling off towards the downside. Okay, selling off aggressively towards the downside, and then right here, we have our low, and then right here, we have our TCT distribution model potentially developing and confirming. Let's put the low right there, and let's put the third tap. So yet again, right, we are expecting a lower high for a lower low to take place on Bitcoin. We're moving up away from that bottom into potential resistance. Right here, we see a high probability distribution model developing on ENA. We get the confirmation of this distribution model during our Asia session on the 11th of November, allowing for 9+ RR opportunities. You can go and backtest this for yourself. But what is the context right here? Well, we have resistance above us. We have resistance levels above us right here with supply POIs right here and supply POIs higher up. But what can we see? We can see a low. We can see price moving away from that bottom upwards into potential resistance. So if we look at ENA here, we have a bottom. We have price moving away from that bottom, establishing a high probability distribution model and confirming it. Contextually speaking, that puts ENA in a semi-pro environment for the distribution model. When we analyze Bitcoin simultaneously with these pivots on ENA, what can we see? We can see this bottom being the same. We can see this bottom or top being right there. And the confirmation right here is taking place as Bitcoin takes that high right here, as Bitcoin sweeps those buy-side liquidity highs. So yet again, right here, you have Bitcoin moving upwards, okay? You have Bitcoin moving upwards away from the bottom into potential resistance levels here and here, grabbing that buy-side liquidity as we are confirming our TCT distribution model. From a contextual standpoint, that puts us in the semi-pro environment. So we have Bitcoin, our major, being semi-pro. We have ENA, our individual altcoin, being semi-pro. So that puts us yet again in the A category, contextually speaking. Now, in this situation, simultaneously, we had the potential for Bitcoin, right here, we had the potential for Bitcoin to establish a bearish PO3 as well, where this was your ranging environment, and this was going to be that manipulation right there above that range high, simply adding to the probabilities of price potentially reversing. But you don't have the confirmation. I want to make this very clear. You don't have the confirmation. The confirmation takes place if you get the structural confirmation or the TCT confirmation, and then we switch to pro, contextually speaking. You're still semi-pro because you're still moving upwards without getting the rotation confirmation back down as the individual altcoin is developing its distribution model. But if you have your high probability distribution model from the TCT variables, as you guys know from the TCT Mentorship 2025, with the major Bitcoin being semi-pro contextually speaking, and ENA being semi-pro, therefore an A setup contextually, you're trading with a high probability or very high percentual win rate. And you can take those trades. Okay?